Hello friends and fellow bibliophiles, welcome back to Kat's Novel Adventures. It's wrap-up time, so today's video is about everything that I read in the month of July. I am starting off with some stats today. I keep track of my books on Goodreads, and my goal this year is 75 books. As of today, I have read 55 books. I think that's pretty amazing. I am actually 12 books ahead of schedule, and I know I will reach my goal and I will surpass it. So I'm very excited about that. Also, for the month of July, I had 6 5-star reads, 1 4-star, and 2 3-stars. So I can't wait to share everything that I read with you. The first book I want to share with you is actually a book club selection for Kelsi at Slime and Slashers. This was her June read, and I started it in June, but I wasn't able to finish it until July, and that is when we had our live chat about it. And the book is a 5-star read for me, and it was fantastic, and that is Beloved by Toni Morrison. This book, wow. I can't say I loved it because of the content, but I loved it because of how well written it was, how much depth the characters had. The character of Setha is just someone who will stay in my heart and mind for a long time. This was a heavy read, and that's why I couldn't finish it in June, because I had read The Dance Tree, then I read My Perfect Hero, which was kind of like a palate cleanse because Dance Tree was a pretty hard read as well. But Beloved was even harder to read than The Dance Tree, and I had to take several breaks because of the content. This book really is a story about Setha and everything that she has to go through to make amends with her past. I don't want to go into a lot of details with this because Kelsi and I had a chat on her channel, Slime and Slashers, where we really discussed in depth our feelings about the book, our feelings about the time period. Please check out that conversation because it was really wonderful in my opinion. We were able to really delve into a lot of themes and a lot of feelings about it. I can see why Toni Morrison won the Pulitzer Prize for this book. It was my first read by Toni Morrison. I had always wanted to read it, and I will definitely be picking up more work from her because she writes so beautifully. It is a haunting book. It is a book that I think about from time to time ever since I finished it. And it will be a book I think I would revisit, but I will need many years in between to do that. But it's only because I want to revisit Setha. She really made an impression on me as a character. At the beginning of July, I participated in my very first Summerween, and I had a great time. I am going to just show you the books that I read for Summerween. I'm not going to go into details about them because I did a whole entire vlog of my Summerween experience. So please check that out if you want to see what I did during that week and get some more details about the books that I read. So the first book I want to share with you is The Spider and the Fly. This is based on a poem by Mary Howitt, and the illustrations are by Toni Ditterlizzi, and this is a fantastic book in my opinion. It is about a conniving spider who is trying to convince this little naive fly to come into his den. And we know what spiders like to do with flies, don't we? But this was a 5-star read for me, and I loved it. The next book that I read was The Silent Patient. This is by Alex Michaelides. This one I had a lot of expectations for. It's basically about a painter who shoots her photographer husband and doesn't get sent to jail for it. She actually gets sent to a behavioral facility. There is a psychiatrist who has an interest in her case, and he thinks he's going to get her to talk because she stopped talking after the murder. Well, I started off loving this book, and then, I don't know, and I ended up giving it 3 stars. So if you want to know the reasons for that, check out my vlog. Next up, I read The Sundog by Stephen King. And this one surprised me because it started off kind of slow. This is the book that I had chosen to read just at nighttime. And I was, you know, bumping along thinking, not much is going on. Well, it ended up turning out to be a terrific read after all. It was 4 stars for me, and that Sundog, let me tell you, dangerous stuff. And then I read my very first manga. That was pretty fun because I went with a recommendation from my son Andrew. So I read the first volume of Demon Slayer, and I really, really, really enjoyed it. It is a sad story because our main character, his family is basically obliterated, except for his sister, who ends up being turned into a demon because his family is slaughtered by a demon, and he has to become a demon slayer to avenge his family's death and also to help his sister. So I will continue with this series. This was a 5-star read for me. And then last but not least, I read a short story out of my Susan Hill collection. It was Printer's Devil Court. It was a fantastic ghost story. It has some Frankenstein vibes to it, gothic feels, and I really was surprised about the ending. I gave this short story 5 stars. I read 3 books for book clubs this month. For the Cozy Cottage, they had chosen Pollyanna by Eleanor H. Porter. Oh my goodness, what a sweet book. What a sweet little girl Pollyanna is. It is about Pollyanna in her story about how she comes to live with her Aunt Polly in a huge house on a hill, and it's because, unfortunately, she becomes an orphan. Her mother had died years before, and then her father, who is a minister, dies, and the ladies' aid community for the church takes care of her until they find out that Aunt Polly would be willing to raise her. Now, Aunt Polly is very strict. She isn't married, and she likes things to be done just so, and she has never really had much experience with children. But Pollyanna is so sweet and kind and has a gratitude attitude because her father teaches her about a game, and that game is for you to try to find the good in any situation, even if it's a bad one. And Pollyanna actually brings the whole town around. She meets this curmudgeon who she passes by when she goes to visit Mrs. Snow and helps him out when he ends up breaking his leg. She helps some of the people that work for Aunt Polly. She helps another little orphan boy. She just brings so much sunshine to everybody's day. Well, something happens to Pollyanna, and it challenges her to see the silver lining in the situation that she faces. And it's amazing what the town does to rally around her so that she can make it through that ordeal. I loved it. It was a 5-star read for me. It just really helped me because I myself had quite a few challenging moments in July. It really made me stop and think that even though I'm going through something tough, there's always blessings, there's always a silver lining, there's always something positive to look at, you know, in the situations. So I would definitely recommend Pollyanna if you are looking for just a dose of pure book joy. For the middle grade March book club, the ladies chose 3 Strike Summer by Skylar Shrimp. This was fantastic. It is a historical fiction novel. It takes place during the Great Depression. It really talks about the time period where the country was experiencing the Dust Bowl, so a lot of farms were collapsing because of dust storms. And this character, Gloria May Willard, she is feisty, and I just love her character. But her family has to move from their farm in Oklahoma because their crops have failed and they don't have any money to pay their bills or pay for their land and their home. So they're forced to leave their farm in Oklahoma and travel to California, where they are basically going to become migrant workers. They work on a peach farm in a peach orchard that also has a factory where they can can the peaches as well. And the whole entire family is going to work on this peach farm because that's just how it works. So Gloria and her sister and dad pick peaches. Her mom works in the cannery. It's not the greatest situation because the people who own this orchard don't pay fair wages. They do offer housing, but they charge a lot for the housing and the electricity. They also have a store on the grounds, but the prices are expensive. And so there becomes some unrest among the workers because they really do feel like they're getting taken advantage of, which they are. And there is rumblings of talk of strike. And we know that if you start talking about that and organizing, some bad things can happen to you. But one thing I didn't mention is that Gloria loves baseball and she loves to play, and she's never given the chance because it's a boys' game basically. And she discovers that there's a group of boys who have formed a baseball team and they play against a neighboring group of boys who work at an apricot farm. So anyway, she ends up proving herself to get on this baseball team, but the boys, especially one in particular named Terrence, doesn't want to skirt on his team. Well, some things happen, and some of it good, some of it not so good. But what I loved about the book was learning about this time period. I loved this strong female character. I loved the dynamics of the family, her relationships with her sister, her relationships with her parents. She does make friends with some of these boys. Fabulous conversation between Gloria and her mom in chapter 19 that just really hit me in the heart. Just, made me tear up. And it is basically a conversation about the difference between pride and honor. And because of that conversation, Gloria's eyes are open to a lot of things that she really kind of misinterpreted, because there are things that happen to the family when they're in Oklahoma, and it makes Gloria kind of uncomfortable to be around her ma. But after this conversation, she realizes, there is more to her ma than she expected. And I just love that their relationship heals at that moment. And then she ends up looking at people and their situations in a different light. But it was a 5-star read for me. I loved it. The author, has a wonderful note at the end of the book about this time period and the struggles that migrant workers had during that time. And she also has a list of other books if anyone is interested in reading more about this time period in the United States. For the Thrills, Chills, and Kills book club, we voted on A House at the Bottom of a Lake by Josh Malerman. And this book is marketed as a horror novel, but in my opinion, it's more of a romance. It is about a young guy named James who works at his father's hardware store, and a young girl named Amelia who happens to come into the store because she needs to buy a new hose. Well, James has the courage to ask her out on a date, and they decide that they're not going to do the normal dinner and a movie kind of date. they are going to go out on a canoe on the lake. So they do that. James borrows his uncle's canoe and they pack, a little lunch and something to drink or whatever. They go out on the lake. Well, they discover a second lake, and then they discover a third lake. But they have to go through a tunnel that is quite a tight fit. And when they get on the other side of the tunnel, they make a discovery. And that discovery is a house at the bottom of a lake. And the house is very interesting because it just looks like a house basically just sunk, that it was there on land and then just sunk to the bottom. Well, they decide that they're going to each take a turn and go down into the house and kind of explore for a little bit, because they don't have any way of accumulating a lot of air. And I don't know about you, but I wouldn't be able to stay underwater for very long before I'd pass out and die. But anyway, they just decide that this is the best thing, and they're going to come back, but they're going to also make sure that they have some kind of equipment that will allow them to explore the house some more. They kind of fall in love and have a relationship all centered around this house. However, I was kind of disappointed because as much as the scenes when they're exploring the house are awesome, it doesn't go anywhere. It's like things will happen in the house and you're like, this is awesome, what's going to happen next? And they just kind of mention it, and then it's like donna, 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 and then nothing. So I was really disappointed about that and bummed out. So I ended up giving it 3 stars. I'm not going to go into a lot of details because I don't want to spoil anything. And I will say that I loved the fact that Josh Malerman uses the house as a metaphor, basically, for young love or first love, and their exploration of the house is like exploring their feelings for one another. There is some symbolism in here, and I love that. But you don't really care about the characters too much. Like, I cared more about the house, which to me was the main character of the story, than I did about James and Amelia. Their conversations were kind of flat, and really the most dynamic part of the book was the house. But I will say that I will read other stuff by Josh Malerman. This was my first book that I've ever read by him. And like I said, there is some symbolism in there. There's a lot to do with water. There's a lot to do with houses. There's a lot to do with exploration, about decisions that you make when you're experiencing first loves. I don't know. I didn't hate it. Let's put it that way. I enjoyed it. But to me, it was a 3-star read. And I think partly it's because I wasn't invested in the characters, and I do prefer more character-driven type novels or stories. And also I went in expecting a horror novel, and it really was more of a romance. I just wanted to also mention some other reading events that I participated in. For the first time, I participated in a 24-hour reading retreat for the Booktube Besties, and it was a blast. I loved it so very much. Now, I was not up for 24 hours, obviously, but it started at 7 p.m. my time, and we had some breakout meetings because it all took place on Zoom. We had sprints, they had giveaway prizes. It was just a time for us to get to know new booktubers or new people in the booktube community. So I had such a great time participating in that, and I hope that I get to do that again because it was really a special event. And for it, I had read Pollyanna. I had finished it because that Saturday, this took place on a Friday the 21st, and then Saturday the 22nd, the book club for Cozy Cottage, their meeting was on the 22nd, so I had to finish Pollyanna. Also, they had a group read, which was The Getaway Girls by D. MacDonald, and I ended up starting it after Pollyanna, but then didn't finish it. And then we had a concert, my husband and I, to go to in Metairie, Jefferson area, which is kind of close to New Orleans. We went to go see the Producers, who we have not seen since like the 80s. So it was really awesome. I think it was like the 40th anniversary of one of their albums, but that was a great time. And on the way, I was doing sprints in the car on my phone and also reading some of Fairy Tale by Stephen King. But it was just a fantastic reading event. Now, I will say I was very disappointed with my participation for Christmas Evil in July. And the reason why is that week, beginning with July the 16th all the way until July the 23rd, my week was already extremely busy with just commitments that I had made. You know, with the Columbia Theater, I was part of a workshop for the Amityville 74, which was in the evenings for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evening. I had to go to the dentist, and I found out, you know, when I went to the dentist with my boys just to get my teeth clean, that lo and behold, I have to get a crown for my tooth that I thought the filling was going to be okay for. And then I had the reading retreat and then the concert. So my week was jam-packed. Well, my mom unexpectedly went into the hospital on July the 15th, and she was there until July the 22nd. So in addition to everything else that I was committed to, I had to travel, you know, to see her each day. And so that was a lot of running back and forth because they're an hour away from where I live. So you're looking at, you know, 2 hours on the road each day plus an hour or two of visitation time. Thankfully, she's home and we're working through some things for that. And then I also found out that my very best friend Shelly, who you may have seen in my Friends of the Library vlog, she is scheduled to have open heart surgery on August the 11th. And so getting that news. So it's just a number of things all kind of happening at one time. And I also help my mother-in-law, who's 91 years old. You know, I take her to her doctor's appointments as well. And I believe she had a doctor's appointment that Tuesday of that week in Baton Rouge, which is about 40 minutes from home. Not that you want to know all of that stuff, but I'm explaining it just because I didn't get a lot of reading done at all for Christmas Evil in July, which I was really, really looking forward to. I was able to count my 2 book club books for at least 2 of the 3 reading prompts. So A House at the Bottom of a Lake by Josh Malerman counted as my mood read, and then 3 Strike Summer by Skylar Shrimp, that counted as the one for happening during the summer, set during the summer. I was able to attend one watch party that Kelly of Kelly Hooked on Books hosted, and that was Addams Family Values, and I really enjoyed that because I hadn't seen it in so long, and I love the Addams Family. It's just a lot of fun. But I was very disappointed that I couldn't do more for Christmas Evil in July. But that's the way it is when things come up. You know, you have a plan and sometimes you have to be flexible when things crop up. But I will say, overall, I am pleased with how everything worked out for the month. I mean, I actually read 8 books and 1 short story. I also have 3 books that I started in July that I'm carrying over. Fairy Tale is one of them. The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants is another one. And then, of course, The Getaway Girls is the other. So these 3 have been added to my TBR, which please check out that video as well if you want to see what I am reading in August along with finishing up those books. But I also am pleased because some of the books that I read did help me for my summer book bingo. For Sunset Colors on the cover, The Sundog by Stephen King counted for that. She also has a square for graphic novel or manga, so Demon Slayer, fulfilled that square. Also, one word title, Beloved, covered that by Toni Morrison. And the square that has a screen I can't speak, an adaptation, a book that has a screen adaptation, that was Pollyanna by Eleanor H. Porter. At least I got some more squares, and I'm getting close to some more bingos. So if I can finish 2 more books, then I'll have bingos going diagonally. We'll see what happens. I'm very hopeful for that, and I really am enjoying filling up this summer book bingo board. Well, that is a wrap of my July reads. Thanks so much for stopping by and watching my videos. I really, really, really appreciate you. It means a great deal to me that you comment on my videos, that you share recommendations with me. In fact, did you have a favorite July read? How did your reading events go in July? Were you able to feel successful in whatever you had planned to read for July? If so, let me know in the comments below. I love chatting with you. But until our paths cross again, stay amazing and be adventurous.